Welcome to the Athletic FC podcast with me, Ayo Akinwolere. Wrexham are now just one step away from the Premier League. How have they managed to climb so quickly? And when can we expect to see them in the top flight? All right, here with us today, we have our Wrexham correspondent, Richard Sutcliffe, or Sutty as I might call him, on the pod. And also we got Matt Slater as well. Right, Sutty, let's start with you. Look, for the third consecutive season, Wrexham are celebrating promotion. They're the first team in English football history to win back-to-back promotions. Fair to say they've kept you busy, and you've probably gone from instant coffee to potentially espressos at some point by the time you climb the leagues, mate.
It is. It's a good way of looking at it. That now as press guys, we like to the facilities we get, and I think my first away games were Altrincham and Maidenhead, and obviously next season it's Southampton, Leicester, Ipswich, maybe Sunderland. It just shows how far a club's come in. 3 seasons. It's beyond I would have thought even the dreams of the owners when they took over.
Yeah, for sure. But what an achievement this is. And I guess there would have been doubters and still doubters at this moment in time. But I mean, you can't write off how big this is and how massive this is for the town of Wrexham.
Oh, it's life-changing for the town. It's not so long ago, 4, 5, 6 years. It's a town that's had its hard times. It's lost all its industries, or most of its industries, mining, steel. And, it was just a sort of forgotten place, which... happens to a lot of towns, particularly across the north, whether it's Wales, whether it's England. But the civic pride that its football clubs brought back, people now, I went on holiday with a few later last year, and the pride they have, people always ask, where you're from? And when they said Wrexham, I actually said, I watched you all, and your chest puffed out a little bit. And I thought that was the biggest indication of the transformation that's gone on.
Promotion to the Championship within 2 years. I mean, how have they done it? And how did you foresee this?
How did I foresee it? Well, every now and then you get them right, don't you? Come on, Richard will tell you the how in terms of the football, and I'm sure we can get into some of the players they brought in. They've improved their squad as every good club. You don't rest on your laurels. They spent in January, which I thought was quite significant. Sam Smith, not many clubs in League One could have gone out and done that. But I think that the bigger picture, if you like, the macro picture is, and I think that was the point I was trying to make whenever that was that a year ago, was that Rob McElhenny and Ryan Reynolds chose very well. So much of what I do is speaking to people about buying English/Welsh teams, and they picked a good one. They picked a club with upside that was a sleeping giant, so many of those, but was ripe for progress if managed and done well. Really good footprint in terms of fan base, a good story to tell, that whole kind of Welsh angle. I remember talking to people at Wrexham and they kept making this point that kind of Welsh football is southern Wales, Cardiff, Swansea, Newport, and then there's us in the north, and we've got this sort of half a country to what we can do. Then I think you add that kind of good raw ingredient with, I think it does bear saying again, Ryan Reynolds is not a sort of typical famous person. He's unbelievable. He's very, very, very famous. So it's really, really weird to get A-list and a sort of sports project. And for him to do it so well, for him to really put his reputation on the line. If this had gone wrong, cuddly, funny, cute Ryan Reynolds would be tarnished, certainly in North Wales. Rob McElhenny, again, not as famous 3-4 years ago as he is now, but, a big deal in US TV. Clearly a guy that really gets sport. And he's very competitive, full of energy. So there was good chemistry between those two. Good chemistry between those two and the club they bought. And then, of course, we've just got the fact that Welcome to Wrexham, which might not float everyone's boat, but is this sort of wonderful mashup of Sunderland Till I Die and Ted Lasso, frankly, has really worked. Has really worked as a piece of entertainment, and then has really worked as a vehicle to pull this football club along.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about Welcome to Wrexham a little later on, Sutty, but, It's interesting, isn't it? Because through that program, viewers would have got used to certain faces like Ollie Palmer, Paul Mullin, who are the stars now, I guess, as the program's evolved, and players that have played a key role in Wrexham's promotion.
Yeah, it's that's been the most interesting aspect of the season, really, because you mentioned there, Mullin is the poster boy, and quite rightly so. 100 odd goals in 3 seasons. He powered them up the leagues, no doubt about that. But then this season's come along, and it's not quite happened for him. He's had 2 pre-seasons which he's missed, which, as any professional athlete will tell you, you pay a price for that, and he has. 3 goals in 20 odd games, and they're just jettisoned him. End of January. They had a horrible start to the year. I think it was something like they got 4 points from 5 games. And Phil Parkinson's reaction was he signed 2 strikers. He dropped Ollie Palmer. He dropped Paul Mullin from the matchday squad, not just the actual team, and just went in a completely different direction. And people absolutely love Ollie Palmer. They love Paul Mullin. So the fans were upset. But strength of management, and that's in terms of we ask for like the how they've got where they have. Phil Parkinson's a huge part of that, but also the fact that the owners have come in and they've left it to football people. Matt will have lost count of the number of times he's met foreign owners who've come in and thought, I know what I'm doing here. And then the clubs, they've lost 30, 40 million within 2 years. Whereas these guys, they bought a club for £2 million that I would say now, the estimate, now they're in the Championship, you're probably looking at £100 million value for the club. But that's been done by good, sensible football decisions, whether that's off the pitch, and he's had Sean Harvey, now Michael Williamson, and Fleur Robinson before that, Humphrey Carr. But, on the pitch, it's been Phil Parkinson. That's what's driven it. And obviously Phil is as much a star of the show now as anybody, really. Everyone's seen his rather potty-mouthed half-time dressing downs and things like that. But I went on the first tour to the States in 2023, the pre-season tour, and I was walking through, I think it was Raleigh Airport, I couldn't remember which one. It was 5:30 in the morning, and Phil Parkinson was about 5 steps ahead of me. And I just saw these women just come out of their shop. Bear in mind, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. And so, Phil, we're massive fans of the show. Don't really like sports, but we love you. And they wanted a selfie. And I'm thinking, wow, how's that happen? I've known Phil a long time, but I've known Phil as the manager of Hull City and Bradford City, not American superstar sort of thing. But that's the show. The show has made stars out of, I won't say ordinary people, and I mean that in a nice way, not in terms of Wayne Jones. The Turf. He's the landlord of the local pub. Again on the tour last summer in Vancouver, people were queuing around the block to have a selfie with Wayne before the game in the fan zone. And I think that's the secret of the show, which I know we're going to come on to. But it's not just about Reynolds and McElhenny being the stars. It's about the lead singer of Declan Swans. It's about the landlord of the Turf. It's about the girl who has autism. And that's the beauty of it, because it captures the community. And I think they're the real stars as much as your Paul Mullin and Ollie Palmer and this season Arthur Okonkwo and people like that.
Yeah, for sure, Matt. I want to talk about brand awareness very briefly, and obviously the documentary does help with that. But I'm just thinking, Wrexham reaching the Championship, how important this is for their brand awareness, because a lot of this is also about making money. I was in New York a couple of months ago, and I was watching Arsenal's Champions League match, and they were showing all the Champions League matches because there's big football fans there. But then in this corner, they were showing Leeds, and I was like, that's a Championship team. And you've got this pub that actually is there with a little Championship section, because obviously I think CBS bought the rights to the Championship as well. So how important is this for the brand awareness of Wrexham to have more eyes on the team?
Well, yeah, absolutely. For that really good reason there. Championship, the EFL has actually done a really good TV deal. This is the first season of it, the one that we're just coming to the end of. So there's more TV money straight away for getting promoted to the Championship. They're playing bigger clubs. They're playing a lot of ex-Premier League clubs that have significant fan bases of their own. Bigger gates. Well, they're going to struggle to get any more in at the racecourse, but they're going to be going to bigger grounds. And I think just from the sort of TV programme point of view, there's no danger of getting stale and boring, is there? If a few more years of League One, which is a pretty hard league to get out of, well, it has been for other clubs, could have got a little bit stale, but no. We got a whole new series of locations, storylines. I think about that kind of North American audience being introduced to parachute payments, being introduced to really big away followings and really big grounds that Wrexham are going to go to, and they're not going to be the cuddly fairy tale. There's going to be a lot more scrutiny on this story from within the UK, from within basically sort of English football fans. So I think there's a load more stuff in terms of their brand, in terms of what they can do, the money they're going to bring in. The story continues, and it's fresh tales. It's they are now one step away from the Premier League. I mean, that's surely the writers, not that I don't know how much writing they need to do, to be honest, are licking their lips.
Well, under the co-ownership of Rob McElhenny and also Ryan Reynolds, Wrexham's popularity off the pitch, as much as on it, has soared. Notably around their documentary series, Welcome to Wrexham. Now, joining us to talk about their popularity, particularly in the US, is Felipe Cardenas. Now, Felipe, talk to us about this. How popular are Wrexham, and what does this latest promotion represent? And be honest, I can't imagine Wrexham are on the lips of every American, but I imagine there's a section of the American public, because of this documentary, that have warmed to this team.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think from a general sense in the United States, Wrexham is well known because of the documentary. That's the bottom line. I think American sports culture loves an underdog. They love an engaging entertainment product. And they love Hollywood stars that I think that veer off of what they typically do in Hollywood to maybe propel a different type of project that seems successful. So like Wrexham has all of that. You've mentioned the two owners. And listen, I mean, I don't have polling, I don't have reporting to tell you how popular they are. Wrexham isn't covered on the mainstream in mainstream media. Like the fact that they are just one step away from the Premier League, that wasn't on, ESPN Sports Center, it wasn't on CNN. It wasn't the big story, a sports story for CNN. They're not quite there yet. I still think that it is very much a niche crowd. And when you look at, Ryan Reynolds and what he has done over the last, decade just in Hollywood, I would invite any listener as well to like go watch his early stuff, when he was not that well known, just to really see just how talented a comedian he is and an actor he is. But now, the Deadpool series has really blown up. It has made Ryan Reynolds a figure, a celebrity that everybody knows. Rob McElhenny is a bit different, but I have a little tidbit for you. And there's the big show here on YouTube that you guys may know, Hot Ones, is a show that you may see all types of celebrities on there. So Rob McElhenny was on recently, and the way he was introduced, I think, tells you a bit about where Wrexham is in terms of American pop culture. Rob McElhenny was introduced as one of the stars of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which in my opinion is still one of the best shows on television. It's excellent. They're going into their 17th season. And then the host of Hot Ones says, and you can keep up with him with his Emmy Award-winning sports documentary series, Welcome to Wrexham. Not that he's the owner, not that this is a team that is fighting for promotion, not that this is a team that may someday be in the Premier League, which we know is the most popular football league in the United States, bar none, I think. So there's still that bit of, I think, a misconception and maybe not a full knowledge of what the project really is, or what the goal of the project is, which is to make this football club a very successful one at the top stage. So, from just a brand perspective, Welcome to Wrexham, as Matt mentioned, it is along the same lines of Sunderland Till I Die. It is, in the realm of Hard Knocks, which is the big NFL sports documentary that everybody knows here, whether you like the NFL or not. You understand every year you wait to see which team is going to be on Hard Knocks. And then Drive to Survive, the F1 series on Netflix, like all this whole ecosystem of sports documentaries, that's where Welcome to Wrexham is. I still think they need to punch out of that bag to become a well-known sports team in the US.
Yeah, on that note, Sati, you wrote in your piece on this promotion. You note that Danny DeVito was also consulted. We'll be dropping a few names later, but he acted as a sounding board in relation to McElhenny after watching Sunderland Till I Die. Look, Sunderland were a very different situation to Wrexham in many respects, but Felipe says something I thought was really interesting and has been really fascinating, having family that live in America, is that Americans love this underdog story, this do or die story. We've also got the jeopardy of relegation and promotion in the league system in this country. How much do you think that really contributes to the huge popularity of it for American fans? Because it's very different to what they have as a sporting structure in the USA. Yeah,
whenever you're out in Wrexham, there's busloads and busloads of Americans who come across. The some are on the 4th or 5th visit now, always going in the turf. Always meeting Wayne. And when you speak to them, that's one of the factors they always bring that they love about this, is the promotion and relegation. And I think, in hindsight, this is how it's turned out. The very fact that the first series ended on a low, people forget now that in the end of the first series, they actually lost in the playoffs. They lost 5-4 at home. The dream was over. There's going to be another couple of £1 million it was going to cost the owners. And it felt like the end of the world. By giving that side of the story first, obviously now it's been 3 back-to-back promotions. It's all success. It's a pitch invasion. It's great stuff. Looking forward to the next year. But by introducing that side of the jeopardy, and also, there was even an episode in that first series. Should we sack the gaffer? Should we get rid of Phil Parkinson? Because it's a very different narrative at that time. And I think to actually put that out first has done it such a favour in terms of as a series, as a story, as a narrative. And we could go back to that next season. The step up to the Championship is absolutely gigantic, absolutely huge. And this squad needs major overhaul to even survive, I would say, up there. So the narrative next year is going to be very different. It is going to be jeopardy. Are we going to get relegated? How much will this cost the club? It sounds daft now, he's won back-to-back promotions. And this shouldn't be a question that will be asked, but in modern day football it is. What about Phil Parkinson? If they are 22nd when we're going into December, but that go back to the original question, that is part of it, that jeopardy and that being able to go up and down and moving up and down. It's such a big thing, and it's such a big appeal to the American market, and certainly those fans who keep coming back and back and back for repeat visits because they love that aspect of the sport.
Yeah, how much money would this cost the club, Matt? I'm just thinking the Championship, getting a team to be functional in the Championship, but also a team ready if they get promoted to the Premier League, costs a lot of money. But also, I'm thinking as a marketing tool, this documentary must be interesting in terms of opening up Wrexham to bidders, marketeers, on an international level as opposed to just an American level and the UK level.
Absolutely. I'm fascinated by the documentary. I think it's all right. I can't profess to saying I've seen all of them, but I've dipped in and out. It's more the idea, and as Felipe has mentioned, we're sort of in a kind of golden age of sports documentaries at the moment. The Last Dance, that was a massive COVID hit. Drive to Survive. There's just so many, right? And some of it is to do with the explosion in choice, the streamers. Sports rights are really expensive. They know people like sport, so content about sport that isn't the live stuff is cheaper. But people love knowing behind the scenes. We've seen the All or Nothing stuff. Is that really behind the scenes? I don't know. But anyway, we sort of like the idea that it might be. We're nosy. We're curious. We want to know more. So we've got that going on. With Welcome to Wrexham, my understanding, the conversations I've had with people around the deal, around how Rob and Ryan got together, how Rob sort of got the idea, his genius in this was spotting the desire, the appetite for more Sunderland Till I Die. So he got that immediately. That was his entry to football. The story, which I know we've talked about on this podcast before, was, in COVID, he didn't really like football. He used to tease Humphrey Kerr about football. He was told to watch Sunderland Till I Die. He box setted it in one night. Following morning, I've got an amazing idea. We've got to buy a club. That is the story. That's the beginning of this story. He saw that this was a content play. This was about entertainment. He's fallen in love with football, and he's fallen in love with Wrexham, and that again is part of the sincerity of the story. But it was a TV genius's idea to make TV that started this. So I think the next iteration of this, and we're already, by the way, we're kind of there, is Welcome to ... It is a franchise. It's owned by Disney. What did Disney do? Franchises. What is Deadpool? A franchise. These guys are really good at entertainment franchises. So we know they've already invested in a Mexican team, Necaxa, again with famous people, Eva Longoria and Justin Verlander, baseball player, his famous wife Kate Upson. Loads of them are in there. So I think they've already filmed that. So that's coming. They have invested in a Colombian team, which I think they're going to rename as Bogota. It's got Equidad, I think is its name. So they're going to give it a more obvious name. Yeah, is that it? So, yep. So you have the name recognition, right? A bit like kind of PSG and everyone, all these clubs want to be known as Paris. Bogota. Well, we've all got. I've got a mental image of Bogota right away. I think I'd watch the first one of Welcome to Bogota. We know that Ryan Reynolds was interested. We know that Ryan Reynolds was interested in buying an NHL team. Canadian NHL team. Welcome to, I don't know, help me out here, Felipe. The Hartford Whalers, whatever it was that he was looking at.
Don't ask me hockey questions.
I picked the wrong athletic colleague from the other side of the Atlantic.
Exactly.
And I can see a baseball team, a AA baseball team, somewhere in the middle of nowhere. This is the beginning of something. So this is going to get bigger. But I think Felipe also just, I think it was really interesting that I didn't know about, what was it called, Hot Ones? That's a new one for me. I'm sure my kids are across
it's a really good one.
Yeah, they keep eating chicken wings. It gets hotter and hotter and hotter. Yeah. It's great. Well, check it out.
Yeah. It sounds all right. But that's a sort of kind of, a touch point, right? That's where he is. For me, the one that was more interesting was the Super Bowl advert. Now, Felipe, come on. Surely that is a moment. Channing Tatum doing a minute or so in the Wrexham dressing room in Super Bowl.
But that's the story here, Matt, because for me, here in the U.S., Wrexham is a celebrity brand. It's not a football club yet. Okay. Yes. Like now, we've already discussed it. Getting to the championship, that's next level, because now the championship, there is an audience here in the U.S. for that. Not to the point where the Premier League is, but the championship is going to change a lot for Wrexham. But yes, they are a celebrity brand, and that's part of their ongoing story. That's part of the success. To Matt's point, I do wonder if what would the story be like if the owners weren't Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenny? What if they were just like ex-footballers, ex-American footballers, or NFL businessmen? I don't think the story would be what it is today, despite the success of the club. And so the people behind the scenes, the people that, to Matt's point, that have seen the potential for what this type of story can be in terms of an entertainment product, in terms of a streaming documentary, and how to tap into the U.S. market from that perspective. That's still something I think we haven't even. We don't know what the success looks like there. But Wrexham still is not on the tip of everyone's tongue in America. Are we close? I think we'll find out. We will find out the next season. And I thought about this coming into the show. I was like, what if they do earn promotion to the Prem? I mean, now we're talking. Now we're talking about Wrexham being on the Today Show in the morning, on every sports talk radio show. Now they're the owners. That's why they chose these two. That's why these two guys are together. And then they can really discuss the brand and really engage with the American audience. But still, obviously, huge steps to take.
Yeah, I know you've got to go, Felipe. Just one last question before you leave. If Wrexham don't make it to the Premier League, is the documentary strong enough to keep new fans coming to this team? Because, as you said, we're on season 4 now. Are we on season 10? I mean, how much can you flog the same product, realistically, hoping that it garners more attention?
I think the documentary would just be one arm, right? It would just be one piece of the puzzle, because, I witnessed what the Wrexham fandom looks like a few years ago when I was in North Carolina for the $1 million soccer tournament, and Wrexham was like, they were the big invite, and Borussia Dortmund were there, ex-stars from Dortmund, ex-stars from West Ham, but Wrexham was like, that was the army of fans were there to watch Wrexham. And they were more, I think what I noticed from these fans that were there is that they viewed these players like like honestly, like as actors, it was almost like they were following the players as Hollywood stars, not so much intrigued by how they do on the pitch or what their player profiles were. These are people that represent the show that I'm falling in love with. And you've seen Wrexham now begin U.S. tours in the U.S. in the summer. And I think that'll be a part of how to continue to engage with the American audience if they don't, reach the Premier League in their first shot. I think there are a lot of people, especially in England, that don't think they'll ever make the Prem. But in the meantime, I think they have more opportunities to continue to exploit the brand, to bring the brand to new people in the U.S. The summer tours are going to help. And the show is going to continue. I think the show will continue to just grab viewers, and you have the owners that are just great mouthpieces.
Felipe, super quick one before you go to your ice hockey practice. Or hockey practice? Did Wrexham just have a little glimpse of what it could be in the Premier League in terms of interest in the US and North America with that Birmingham City game? Was there a buzz about that one?
Good point.
A little bit, I think with the way that game ended, and the fact that the owners were there and their reactions, and that did make, I think, was part of the news cycle. But again, not part of the mainstream news cycle. I think it was very much running across all social media platforms in terms of what, in the football ecosystem of what social media is. I think, like I said many times, and I don't mean to repeat myself, but they still have a long way to go, honestly. A fabulous win, a third consecutive promotion. That's a story that I think in the American, ecosystem of sports, it's a blip and then it comes back. It's a blip and then it comes back. Here, to be a hero in American sports fandom, you've got to hit the home run, as they say, and they haven't quite done that yet.
Okay, Felipe, really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us all the way from America, brother.
Take care, guys.
Matt, how hard is it to really get a return on your investment when you do buy a football club, especially as you've been climbing, but now you are in the championship, and I mean, you're going to have to spend a whole heap of a lot more money on this team to try and get them to the Premier League. But also, people forget, you want better players. Those are higher wages. Yeah. Well, look, well, no one. They're not proper businesses. I mean, I sort of pretend I pretend they are, but they're not. We just forget that. So the return on investment, though, does come. It does come, but you have to wait. It comes when you sell. All right. Now you either sell all of it and walk away with hopefully a nice tidy profit, or you sell bits on the way, which they're already doing, by the way. And I'm sure Richard, because I know he's written about it, is going to talk a little bit about the minority investment they brought in, the Allen family, interesting family, billionaires, states. Again, more, and I think that's going to think of it like a syndicate. A lot of these teams are basically run like syndicates. People will come in. There'll be people leaving as they progress and the story develops, but that is how, if you like, the founders, the original investors, start to sort of take some money out. Now, in terms of Rob and Ryan, I think the key thing that I'm not sure is fully grasped is Wrexham don't see any of the direct profits from the programme. So we know that original deal they did with the supporters way back when was $2 million to buy the club. There was a vote. What a sensible decision that was to let them take the club on. They lent the club money, shareholder loans. Sounds like other podcasts we've done. I think that loan was up to about 15 million at one point. There was interest. That now has been paid off. Right? So you've got Rob and Ryan who have put some money in, not as much as people think. But what they have put in, and I think I said it right at the top, is their reputations on the line. Like I said, if this had gone wrong, if this had been the Glazers or something else, this would have been a blow to their lovely images. And it hasn't, right? So it's gone well for them. It's gone really well for the club. And the way that the programme, if you like, filters money back into the club is not via, streaming fees that Rob, Bryan and Disney are pocketing. Fair play, good idea, nothing wrong with that. It's the sponsorships, and if you look at like their kind of turnover profile, half of it is basically commercial. That's like a Big Six club. That's sort of what I would expect to see of Liverpool and Man City and United and so on. So just some multiples, right? So they've quadrupled their turnover since the National League days. It was 6, it's now 26 or something.
heading to sort of 27, 28. This is always a year behind, right? So this is like a League Two snapshot we've got. A big club in League Two, Bradford, biggest gates, they earned about 8.5, 9 million. So they're 3 times bigger. If you think about a big club in League One, so Portsmouth, getting promoted last year, they went up with turnover of 13.5. So they're twice as big as Portsmouth in terms of turnover. Where would they sit right now? So again, League Two number, but Richard has told us it's going to be similar for this season. They are already earning more than Hull, Preston, loads of clubs. So the way the Championship basically is, you either get a parachute payment or you don't. The parachute payments, the clubs, tends to be about half a dozen, but it's fewer at the moment, which I will come back to because 3 up, 3 down at the moment. That we just keep replacing. So there are fewer clubs than traditionally there have been with parachute payments. They average a turnover of between 60 and 70 million. Richard did say that some are 100 million clubs. Those are very rare. Those are your Leeds Uniteds or Leicester Cities.
Yeah, that's what I
typically
meant.
A parachute payment. Yeah, typically a parachute payment club is 60 to 70 million. The rest, the 18 to 19, the others are on about 20 to 25. Wrexham are already there. That is before they get the 8-9 million boost on TV. So Wrexham are going to go into the Championship as the best of the rest.
Really interesting aspect of it is, like you said, income League Two, 26.7. Like I said, I don't think it'd be a lot more. But as Matt's just said, the difference between central payments and your solidarity payment from the Premier League, it comes to about 8 to 9 million. Sunderland, in their last financial figures in the Championship, their income was something like 35, 36 million pounds. Wrexham, if you include the extra solidarity payments, are already there. And that's with Sunderland getting 38,000 and Wrexham last season getting 11,500. That's what puts them, and that's what. Yeah, I'll admit I was sceptical about the Premier League line right from the start. Obviously, we all saw it. It's Rob McElhenny says it in the first press conference that they did at the racecourse. Fair play to him, but you get you speak to people about Rob and you speak to him yourself, and he's very much, as you'd say, an A to Z guy, not an A to B. He wants to go all the way. He's all in. And the Premier League line, to me, I was thinking, it sounds great, but this is a club. The highest ever position is 15th in the old Division 2, which is very modest by British football standards. And I thought, they get to the Championship, brilliant, but then it's a different playing field. But I think, and certainly since the Allen family have come on board, and it is the strategy that the men know bones about, there will be selling off minority shareholding. I've changed my mind, and I think it's a racing certainty they'll reach the Premier League now. It won't be this time next year. It probably won't be the year after that. But I'd say within 3 years, I can see Wrexham kicking off in the Premier League. And as Felipe said earlier, that is the whole game changer. It's a different ballpark then, because suddenly they're playing Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, clubs that the wider American sporting public are very familiar with. And then we really are, what happens then, you don't know. It might be, do you peak at that moment or can it build? But I do see him getting to the Premier League, I really do.
Rob McElhenny was talking about that actually I can't remember who it was. I think it was after the promotion, and he was saying, we're heading to the Premier League, and he believes they can do that. But he was like, yeah, we're up against sovereign states and all this kind of stuff. I mean, that would be a fascinating look on how the club is structured and how they even perform in the Premier League. But quickly, Matt, we like to talk about well-run clubs on this podcast. From where you're sitting, looking at this structure right now, does it seem like it's a well-run club and actually well-run to the point of sustainability? Because that's the big factor here for me.
Yes, it does, but with a few provisos, right? So the first thing is this progress, this change has been rapid, arguably sort of too rapid at times. They have had this big budget. So National League, League Two, League One, they have had an advantage over certainly National League and League Two, all the clubs, and this season all, let's say, bar Birmingham. Now there have been some other clubs with big budgets, Huddersfield, Bolton. So it's not been, they've not been streets ahead, but they've had an advantage. Next season's the first time under this ownership where they're not going to be that club. They're going to be, towards the top, but they're not going to be, the really big FC Hollywood type budget. the other thing is that the Wrexham they bought was in a really bad state. Now it had been rescued and had been sort of saved. Well, same word. It had stabilised under fan ownership, but it didn't own its ground. It was renting training ground, and it was basically run by volunteers. The change has been so quick that it's been hard to sort of keep up. Now they've had to hire a load of staff. There's been a lot going on behind the scenes. Richard's written a lot about it. New chief execs coming in, new marketing people. Ryan Reynolds' own marketing company, Maximum Impact, is now taking a big role. All that commercial income has to be got. You have to go out and win it and pitch for it, and then you've got to activate it. All this kind of marketing buzzword nonsense. But it is a cost. It requires people, good people. They're doing
and maintain it as well. And maintain it.
Well, you got exactly. You can't just say thanks so much for the check. Wait for the TV program. You'll love it. You've got to. These are commercial relationships, and your sponsors expect things from you. All these tours to the States, they don't just organise themselves. So they've had to hire a lot of people. They need a training ground. Richard has written about that. They absolutely need a training ground. Didn't really matter in National League because no one's got. I don't know, Etihad campus down there. Probably didn't matter so much in League Two. Starting to matter now. Will definitely matter next year. Players will turn their nose up at having to change, in the car. So they've got to sort that out, and I know that they have plans to. The stadium. So they own the stadium now. They're doing this big project on the Cop, one of their ends, which was empty. Was an eyesore for years because the fan-owned club couldn't do anything with it. It's going to be a fantastic 5,000-6,000 capacity, beautiful Cop. That's going to take a year to build, so they're going to go 3 sides again next year. Now, because of their commercial income, because of their increased broadcasting revenue, the dip in match day won't matter so much. But they've got to manage that. That's a lot of people that want to see Wrexham that won't be able to get in. So they are well run. They're getting there. But it's been hard. Building stuff in this country is difficult. They had this project with the council and the railway next door, opening up Wrexham. All of that takes time. We'll get there. They want to go to 30,000 with the stadium, so they're going to do stand by stand. Again, great idea. Go do it. Go do it now. There's a lot going on. They've got a new CEO. He's been there for about a year. Michael Williamson, ex-INSA. That was interesting. They went out and got him. San Siro, he'd been on that project. He also worked in the States. These are American DC United. So look, they are gearing up on the pitch, off the pitch. They're doing all the right things. So yeah, they are well run.
Okay, gents, let's leave it there. Matt, Richard, and also Felipe for joining us earlier. Thanks so much for your insights, and also thank you guys for listening. Adam Leventhal will be with you tomorrow. We'll catch you soon. If you want to watch more episodes of the show, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season. If you'd like to listen to the episodes in full in audio form, search The Athletic FC wherever you get your podcasts from.